During this lesson you will be required to fill out a worksheet. I recommend you read through the worksheet before viewing the lesson. In order to give you time to do this, you can use the pause button at the bottom of the screen. Building Regulations TGD, commonly known as the Technical Guidance Documents, Part A to M. Learning outcomes. By the end of this lesson you should be able to 1. State the function of the technical guidance documents. 2. List and name all 12 technical guidance documents. And 3. Give a brief description of the scope of each part of the technical guidance documents from Part A to Part M. Technical guidance documents, commonly known as the TGDs. What they do is they give guidance on how to construct a building so that it complies with the regulations. It is the job of the Building Control Authority to ensure the buildings comply with the regulations. Building regulations do not apply to buildings constructed prior to the 1st of June 1992, as this was when the building regulations were introduced into Ireland. To get or to obtain a free soft copy of all 12 technical guidance documents, you should follow the link at the bottom of the screen here. http://www.environ.en/TGD/. Worksheet. Question 1. State the function of the technical guidance documents. Technical guidance documents. As I've said already, there are 12 of them altogether. Part A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. There is no Part I because they thought that Part I would get confused maybe with Part J or Part L. So there's no Part I, so it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, J, K, L and M. Part A is on structure. Part B focuses on fire safety. Part C, site preparation and resistance to moisture. Part D, materials and workmanship. Part E, sound. Part F, ventilation. Part G, hygiene. Part H, drainage and wastewater disposal. Part J, heat producing appliances. Part K is for stairways, ladders, ramps and guards. Part L is conservation of fuel and energy in dwellings and non-dwellings. And Part M, finally Part M, is access and use, formerly known as access for people with disability. So worksheet, question number 2. Try and list and name all 12 technical guidance documents from Part A to Part M. So now we're going to go through each of the sections, just a very short overview to give you just a flavour of what just to give you a flavour of the scope of each part of the technical guidance documents. And I recommend that you go in onto the website and go in and open up some of the documents, and go in and just have a small bit of a browse through them, just to get an idea, just to see what way they're structured and what kind of things that are included in them. It's a good idea to do it now, because then in any time in the future, if you need to access them, you'll have a better idea what they look like and what kind of content is included in them. So part 1 then, or number 1, Part A, which focuses on structure. So we're talking about the structures of the building. So the kind of things that would be covered in this would be loading and ground movement. So loading of the building, imposed loads, dead loads, and the movement and ground movement of the building. Also sizes for certain structural elements for houses and other small buildings. So what thickness should walls be, what size should different types of timber members be for floors and roofs and things like that. Design and construction of all building types, codes, standards and references would all be listed in there. recovering of existing roof structures, and structural safety of external wall cladding also. There's also a small section in there on disproportionate collapse loading, which is just basically about buildings falling down and how to prevent it. Number 2 then, part B, focuses on fire safety, and there's 5 sections in that: B1, B2, B3, B4 and B5. B1 looks at means of escape in case of fire, so we're talking about fire escapes externally and internally in the building. B2 is internal fire spread on the linings, so on the ceilings and walls and floors. B3 is internal fire spread on the structure, that would be inside the roof, inside the walls and floors and different sections of the building. B4 is external fire spread, so how to prevent external fire spread on the outside of the building. Number 5 then covers access and facilities for the fire services, so fire escapes, hoses, water supply, access for fire brigades and stuff like that, and emergency services into buildings. So worksheet question 3. So first of all, describe any 2 items that are covered in part A of the technical guidance documents. So for example, just to give you an example on this first one here, to give you an idea, a guide for the rest of them. So for example, part A, 2 things that are covered in it: sizes for structural elements for houses, and also recovering of existing roof structures. Also have a go at describing any 2 items then that are covered in part B of the technical guidance documents that you can remember. So TGD, the scope of part C and D. So number 3 there is part C, and this is site preparation and resistance to moisture. So the kind of things that are covered in this section would be site preparation and site drainage, what kind of precautions to take and what requirements there are for drainage on the site to make sure that the ground is not the area doesn't flood easy, or there isn't too much moisture in the ground. Number 2 there, dangerous substances. So this would cover radon, which is dangerous gas that can be found in the ground that can leak into your building and cause sickness and illness. So there's all information, including radon maps for the country, to show which areas of the country have higher concentrations of radon as opposed to others. Number 3 then, resistance to weather and ground moisture, how to prevent that moisture getting into the building. Number 4 then, or part D, is materials and workmanship, and covered in that we have materials, and the kind of things that we'll see in there would be fitness of materials, resistance to moisture, resistance to subsoil, high aluminous cement, which is a particular type of cement that's used where you're going to have a lot of moisture, glazing safety, and letter plates also. Letter plates is a new section that was put in there a few years ago because all of the postmen were complaining about letter plates. Letter plates, it's just a letterbox. They're talking about letterboxes in front doors. They were complaining that a lot of the letterboxes or letter plates on the fronts of doors, fronts of houses, were down low, and so they were bending down all the time and they were hurting their backs and getting bad backs from it. So there was a requirement brought in where all letter plates on the doors have to be about 3 foot off the step, so the poor old postmen don't have to bend down anymore. Also covered in part D is workmanship. Generally, all it really says in there about workmanship is that it should be to a high standard, and it should be to the right, there should be the right quality assurance in place. Worksheet question 3. Describe any 2 items that are covered in part C of the technical guidance documents that you can remember. And also describe any 2 items that are covered in part D of the technical guidance documents. TGD scope of part E and F. So number 5 there, part E, is sound, and this focuses on things like the transmission of sound. So we're talking about general walls, floors and similar construction, and how to prevent sound transferring through these parts of the building. Sound, airborne and impact, walls and floors, direct transmission of sound and flanking transmission of sound, which would be up through ceiling voids and down through voids in walls and through cavities and stuff like that. Number 6 then is part F, which is on ventilation, and included in this would be means of ventilation, dwellings and buildings other than dwellings. So we're talking about public buildings and workplaces. Also covered in that would be natural ventilation, which is just like a vent in the wall, a hole in the wall, trickle vent. Mechanical ventilation with heat recovery also. And another section another section that's covered in part F, ventilation, is also condensation in roofs. So there's a huge requirement for the correct amount of ventilation to be provided in the roof structure to prevent moisture build up and prevent rot happening. So that would be covered in part F there, ventilation as well. Worksheet question 3. Describe any 2 items that are covered in part E of the technical guidance documents, and also describe any 2 items that are covered in part F of the technical guidance documents. TGD scope of part G and H. So number 7 there, part G, is hygiene. Included in that would be bathrooms and kitchens in dwellings. Also sanitary conveniences and washing facilities. This would include requirements for sanitary convenience and washing facilities in your workplace, on building sites and in public buildings and the like. Number 8 then, part H, focuses on drainage and wastewater disposal. So included in that would be drainage systems, general, foul and surface water, also external grey water and rainwater storage tanks. Grey water is kind of dirty water. In other words, it's not fit for drinking, but it can be used for lots of other applications. It can be used for cleaning down areas in farms and the like. It can be used for watering plants and all that kind of stuff. Also covered in part H is wastewater treatment systems. That's for domestic and for large scale systems. There will be information in there about that. Worksheet then, question 3. Describe any 2 items that are covered in part G of the technical guidance documents. Also describe any 2 items that are covered in part H of the technical guidance documents. TGD scope of part J and K. So number 9 there, part J, heat producing appliances. So the kind of content we'll see in there is general information on air supply, extract fans and flue pipes for heat producing appliances, solid fuel burning appliances, that's ordinary fireplaces and stoves, gas burning appliances, oil burning appliances, and also information in there on oil storage tanks, types, sizes, requirements and where and how they should be positioned. Number 10 then is part K, which covers stairways, ladders, ramps and guards, and that includes stairways, ladders and ramps. This would be stairways, the height, the angle they should be at, the way that every step should be the exact same height and the exact same depth. It's called the rise, is the term that's called given to the height of each step, and then the going, which is the length of the step. Also ladders, requirements for ladders, how they should be used on site safely, and also ramps for people with people who need to access buildings in wheelchairs and the like. Pedestrian and vehicular barriers also information in there about heights, sizes, and that kind of stuff. So worksheet question 3, describe any two items that are covered in part J of the TGD, technical guidance documents, and also describe any two items that are covered in part K of the technical guidance documents. TGD scope of part L. So number 11 there is part L. This is conservation of fuel and energy in dwellings and non-dwellings. And included in this is probably one of the biggest sections of the technical guidance documents. It has been revised a number of times over the last few years, and it's currently, the latest version of it is 2011, and it's currently being revised at the moment, and we're going to get another one out later this year, I think. So the kind of things that are covered in this would be thermal conductivity and transmittance. So we're talking about how heat is conducted from inside to outside the building and outside to inside the building. In other words, ways of keeping the heat inside the building to reduce energy consumption, and also how to keep, on warm days, how to keep the heat outside the building. Buildings of architectural or historical interest, limitation of primary energy use, and CO2 emissions for new buildings. So this would be all part of the building energy rating that was brought in a few years ago. That would be included in here. Heat loss and gain through the building fabric. That's what we're talking about. Heat loss through the building during the winter. Heat gain through the building through large windows or whatever during the summer. Thermal bridging, which is where if there's any gaps left in insulation at all, it creates a thermal path where heat can escape very quickly out of your building. Sometimes you're better off having no insulation than having insulation put in badly. Air infiltration, that's air leakage. The number one way that heat and energy can escape from your house is through uncontrolled infiltration. That's gaps and cracks all over your building, drafts in your building. Avoiding solar overheating, that's in larger buildings with a lot of glazing. Controls for space heating and hot water supply systems. Air conditioning and mechanical ventilation. Insulation of storage vessels, pipes and ducts, the way all your hot water storage vessels and pipes inside the house should be insulated correctly to avoid losing energy. Artificial lighting, the requirements there. Renewable energy technologies, building services, and also construction quality and commissioning of services. Worksheet then, question 3, describe any two items that are covered in part L of the technical guidance documents. So finally, TGD scope of part M. This is number 12 then. Part M is access and use, formerly known as access for people with disabilities, but there was a campaign a few years ago to change that, because they thought it should be, fairer to say it should be, access and use for all people. So buildings included in this would be buildings other than dwellings, new and existing, and dwellings also. So for dwellings, houses that people live in, and also for buildings other than dwellings, so public buildings and workplaces. Included in this will be approach to dwellings, access to dwellings, circulation within dwellings, making sure that all the doors are wide enough for people in wheelchairs or whatever that have to use wheelchairs that can get through them and maneuver around inside the building. Circulation within dwellings, sanitary facilities for dwellings, switches and light sockets. Switches and sockets in dwellings. So a few years ago there they introduced this section saying for switches and sockets, so all switches and sockets have to be up at a height, so people with disabilities or whatever can reach them, or so all different types of people, shapes and sizes can reach them. Also sanitary facilities for dwellings. There's a requirement that all houses have sanitary facilities on the ground floor. So worksheet question 3, describe any two items that are covered in part M of the technical guidance documents. So in summary then, in this lesson you covered the function of the technical guidance documents, listing and naming all 12 technical guidance documents from A to M, and also giving a brief description of the scope of each part of the TGDs or technical guidance documents from A to M.